Little Jenny's Journey Through the Phases of Learning to Read and Spell, Part 2. Hi, this is Jennifer Militzer-Kopperl of Renewal of Literacy. I'd like to tell you the story of my journey through the phases of learning to read and spell. It will help you understand the phases and how to teach all your students to read and spell. Let's review the phases of learning to read and spell. Number 1, emergent phase. Number 2, phonemic awareness phase. Number 3, pattern phase. Number 4, syllable phase. And number 5, Latin-Greek phase. The second phase is the phonemic awareness phase. It includes the instruction students need to be able to use the alphabet to write and read. Recall that little Jenny now knows that letters represent sounds. She just can't do anything with it because she lacks some key skills in phonemic awareness. Let's pick up with little Jenny's journey through the phases. As you recall, decoding was torture for me. I'd look at the letters M-A-T and say, ah, t, like a zombie, and never be able to figure out which word it was. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't blend individual phonemes into a word. Fortunately, my first grade teacher, Mrs. Steinacker, solved my problem for me by providing direct instruction in phonemic awareness. She taught me there is more to sounds than letters. I was intrigued. Mrs. Steinacker made the whole class do phonemic awareness exercises every day. For example, she'd give us worksheets with pictures and make us circle the picture of a word that would end with, for example, the sound. I had to say the words over and over to myself, listening to the end. For example, needle, needle. Barn, barn. Lips, lips. I had to say these words over and over and over to figure out what sound was at the end. It was incredibly hard work, but it made my little tadpole legs grow longer and stronger. Soon, I discovered that I could segment all the sounds in a word. For example, the word lips has 4 sounds: ul, I, p, s. Mrs. Steinacker then introduced the class to kid writing. She showed us how to write down the letters we heard in a word to do kid writing, and then a parent, a volunteer, would show us how to write our words in adult writing. I was in heaven. I could write my own stories. I kept one of my original masterpieces called, of course, The Kittens. And here's my kid writing masterpiece, The Kittens. It features interspecies adoption, specifically a rabbit who adopted kittens and the concomitant challenges in raising them. I was so proud. I read my stories over and over again. And as the year progressed, a small miracle happened. By learning to segment a word into all of its sounds. For example, mat is at, letters M-A-T. I developed the ability to blend the sounds back into a whole word, i.e., at is mat. I was like many students in the phonemic awareness phase. My ability to encode words or spell them far outstripped my ability to decode words or sound them out. In addition, Mrs. Steinacker taught the class a whole bunch of words that she called sight words. She introduced them as whole words. For example, she told us that the letters R-E-A-D spell read. That was good to know. Now that I could sound out words, I was really struggling with this one. R-E-A-D. What does that equal? Rad. I don't know. Is that even a word? In addition, Mrs. Steinacker and her team of parent assistants went around and assessed every student's reading skills and put us into reading groups. My group was near the bottom of the class. I had to follow along with my finger as my group mates laboriously sounded out words. I got taken to task each time I looked away from my finger, which was every single reading group. Mrs. Steinacker was very old school. However, thanks to Mrs. Steinacker and her parent assistants, I started to gain some fluency. I knew some sight words. Thanks to kid writing and all the phonemic awareness exercises we did each day, I could blend phonemes into a word. At is mat. I concluded that reading might not stink. It was just hard. Little Jenny was learning to read. It was no longer torture, but it was a long way from fun. Little Jenny was a tadpole in metamorphosis, and all the work her teacher did helped Jenny's legs grow longer and stronger in preparation for the next phase. So now let's summarize little Jenny's journey in the phonemic awareness phase. At the beginning of the phase, little Jenny did not have the ability to blend sounds into a word. For example, at is mat. Mrs. Steinacker taught her to blend sounds by segmenting sounds in kid writing. Mrs. Steinacker taught all the components of reading and provided plenty of practice. Little Jenny started making up the lost ground that so many of her classmates had when they started school. Up next, the pattern phase, phase 3. This has been Jennifer Militzer-Kopperl of Renewal of Literacy. Thank you for accompanying me on my journey through the phases. Join me in renewing literacy for the 21st century and beyond.